Hello and welcome to section 3.4. This is unit 3 and we'll be looking at data storytelling today in building narrative. This section focuses on the art of storytelling. We look at how to create a compelling data story, how to build that narrative, what's the best approach, what should be a checklist that will help us every time we want to create a data story so that we extract insights and package those in a way that makes the most impact and gets the point across to convince and influence the right stakeholders, your colleagues, and bring that change that needs to be brought to drive AI adoption in your organization. So, building a narrative essentially depends on the art of storytelling. How do you explain complex data and complex patterns to people of different levels of understanding of data and business, lay audiences to expert audiences? Well, visualizing it helps, as we saw in section 3.2, data visualization. What we can also do is to weave the narrative together into a story that resonates with the audience, has a starting, a conflict and a resolution, a climax, and then an ending. And we do all of this whilst maintaining flow and rhythm without creating too much clutter, keeping it simple, narrowing down on the main central idea. And this is what we look at formally in this section. So what's a data narrative? It's a compelling narrative that helps in presenting some data insights, and you should do this presentation in a way that it's engaging and it's understandable for the audience. Key elements of this narrative include context, insights, recommendations, and impact. So we need to start with a brief overview of the business problem or question that we're addressing to build that context. We provide some background info that sets the stage for the analysis that we've done. This is the motivation and rationale for what we've done and why we've done it. Then we move to the second element, insights. You highlight the key findings from your analysis and use very clear, concise, succinct, and focused language and visuals to explain what the data shows and what impact and implications these have. The next element, recommendations. Based on the analysis and the insights, you need to offer some kind of recommendation that is actionable and make sure that these are specific and realistic and they align with the goals of the business. And finally, the impact. Explaining the potential impact of those recommendations will help to drive that message home as well. So why do we need to build this? Well, I think we've answered this already, but the engagement is a first motivation or rationale. We have a data narrative that is well crafted, then it can capture the audience's attention and maintain that, sustain it. Clarity. A good data narrative helps to simplify complex insights and makes those actionable for the business. Persuasion and influence. A good data narrative can influence the right sponsors, the right stakeholders, the right colleagues, and gets to drive business actions across the organization. And alignment. A good data narrative also aligns the different stakeholder needs, the people, the business function, and the business objectives. So if we want to create a compelling narrative, we need to start with the why. We explain why the analysis was done and why was it important to be done. We need to highlight key findings, keep it relevant and relatable with real-world examples using anecdotes and analogies, use the right visuals and integrate the right visuals in the right places to reinforce your narrative, and have a call to action, which is your recommendations and the actionable insights and what will it help achieve. So if you clearly state what actions need to be taken based on these insights, then you can drive that message forward. So let's take an example and build a narrative. Let's say that you have an objective in your organization to assess customer satisfaction to improve retention. So the body of this narrative, you would need to get some data sample. Maybe that's customer feedback from surveys, and there's a lot of those, and you need to analyze those in some form of automated fashion. So you need to write some kind of a script, extract that from different types of formats. The next part in the body would be findings. When you looked at that data, what were your findings? What insights did you extract? An example is given here. Maybe it's high dissatisfaction with customer service response time. Your analysis would be that you analyzed trends and patterns in this feedback. Maybe you saw some clusters. Maybe there were 3 or 4 clusters. 2 of those were satisfied and 2 were not satisfied. Or when you looked at those customers that were leaving, and you looked at their rationale and their response and feedback and why they were leaving. You found some patterns there. You saw some trends perhaps related to time of the year or with regards to some particular event or product. These are the kind of things that you can highlight. You can conclude the narrative by stating an insight that improving response time to customers could significantly enhance satisfaction. And then you put in a recommendation that we should implement a new response protocol and measure the impact on that to see whether we've improved this retention rate or not. So how do you shape this? Well, you have this narrative, and we've looked at how to make it compelling a couple of slides ago. The why, the key findings, anecdote, and call to action. So the why in this case is customer feedback revealed issues with service response times. This was your insight gained from your analysis of the data. Key findings were customers are dissatisfied, leading to increased churn. The anecdote becomes similar companies have seen improvements by reducing response times. Call to action becomes implement new response protocols and track satisfaction metrics. You associate or integrate this with the right visual, and you have a very clear and succinct narrative already. Now you need to tailor this narrative, understand the audience, know their interests and expertise and priorities and concerns. Adjust the complexity. Perhaps some technical audiences might want to see how you got to this conclusion and what's the background analysis, and you might have some complex visualizations and data that you want to show them. But if you're looking at non-technical stakeholders, leadership who are going to be implementing that protocol or approving that recommendation, then you need to remove the technical detail. Focus on relevance, highlight aspects of the analysis most relevant to their needs. Use appropriate language, don't use jargon, use clear and accessible language. In summary, what we've looked at is that there are some key elements to build a compelling data narrative. You start with a clear objective, use the right visuals to enhance the understanding, make this compelling, tailor that narrative to the audience, and provide actionable recommendations. So let's formalize all of this with a storytelling approach, where we can actually have a number of steps in a checklist. So in our storytelling approach, we start with building and setting the context, as we've seen previously. In the beginning, we said that we needed to have the right context, the right type of visual, etc. So building the setting and building the context. Context and audiences are incredibly important for you to know and understand right when you start. Decide on the goal of the story. You need to know the central idea, the theme, the business scenario. In this case, your analysis showed you that they were dissatisfied with the response time. You looked at other companies that they had implemented new protocols. So this is your central idea that's connected to your recommendation as well. You know the business scenario is related to churn and retention. You choose the right type of visualization and the data. You identify the scenario and theme, and then you exactly adapt the data and the sample to it. Shape the storyline according to the audience. Keep it simple as you develop the plot. Make it very clear and concise. If you include too much or tangential detail, you will blur that final take-home lesson that you want for the audience to remember. And use peripherals only if those aid your central idea. So don't bring any marginal plots or ideas if those are going to clutter up your storyline and make it confusing. The storytelling approach continues. Then you want to drive attention to the crux of that story, narrow down, zoom into the most important element on that central idea. Is there a conflict? Is there a climax? That's the hook of your story to catch their attention. You resolve that with a solution, with the way forward, the recommendation, and the actionable insight that you suggest should be taken up and measured for impact. And finally, choosing the right time and the place. You need to think about billiards or pool or snooker. The force with which and the angle at which the cue ball hits another ball determines the degree of transfer of kinetic energy. So you really need to look at your communication in that with that analogy in mind. When you're talking to the audience, you need to be timing it right. You should know what that right time is, whether a project or a program or an initiative is at that stage where they will be amenable to taking up a new initiative, a new action to implement a new protocol, for instance, and the right audience and the right place. So if you select the right time and the right place, your story and narrative will have maximum impact as well. And we'll take an example now and go through our storytelling approach with a checklist so that we can really start to build this together with a couple of examples. So in summary, the steps of our storytelling approach are 9 in total. You have a central idea, the theme of the story, relevance, is it related to the audience, visuals, selecting the right ones, clarity, no clutter, no tangential peripheral information, focus, focusing the visuals and the evidence on the central idea, bringing conflict, that's the hook of the story, the climax, resolution of that conflict, selecting the right time and the right place. So let's take an example we saw earlier in data visualization section 3.2. You remember the 3 species of Antarctic penguins from a study that's presented in the Seaborn Gallery at this link. We saw the bar charts that showed body mass, entire sample across 3 islands, divided by gender. We saw flipper length in millimeters and the distribution for the 3 species of the penguins. We saw 3 clusters which were made by comparing bill length against bill depth in joint plots and with the contour planes as well. So there is a story here, but what is that story, and do these 4 plots adequately depict that story? So let's use this example with the storytelling approach, building the setting and the context. What's the goal of the story? Are we clear on the central idea? Are we saying penguin species are different in size? The island has some impact and there's variation in body mass. There's species variation as well, and whether we're talking about the population, what is the central idea? It's not clear with those 4 plots. Are you the right audience for this story? Is it relevant? Well, clearly not, because we're all interested in data science. We're not zoologists studying Antarctic life, so it's interesting, but it's not really relevant. Data and visualization choice. Are those 4 plots sufficient in driving the message? Unclear. We're all AI learners. You're doing this course, you're also interested in learning data science, ML, AI. So perhaps it might interest you to build a machine learning model that is classifying the penguins based on this data, but you're not really interested from a domain perspective, and specifically those 4 plots that were shown do not clearly show you why this story is being told to you. The third one in the storytelling approach, keeping it simple, there are too many plots and there's no flow, so I really haven't conveyed any central idea and it's unclear. Next, driving attention to the crux. Well, I haven't made it focused enough. There's no clarity on conflict or climax. Perhaps ML model for classification might appeal to us, but it's not really clear or mentioned. There's no climax, no conflict, so there's no resolution, there's no recommendation. We haven't presented this at all. And finally, choosing the right time and the right place. This is the right time for a data story or narrative, because I'm really trying to teach this in the course, and you are interested in learning it, but it's not the right place because my audience are not primarily zoologists in this case who are studying Antarctic penguins. So let's look at the checklist. We only have 2 out of 9 that we're checking, and the rest are all crossed out. So maybe the hook, which is a weak hook, is that we build ML model for classifying penguin species, and you're interested in data stories, data visualization, data science, and becoming a data science practitioner. So those are the only 2 points that are partially in the checklist out of the 9 steps. So let's try again. We'll take a story that's more relevant. That is from a Kaggle dataset. You can access this on this link, and then there's an exploratory data analysis done on that dataset by another user, which is on this link here. But essentially this dataset contains primarily full-time work, even though there are part-time instances, but primarily a vast majority of the data is full-time work. It contains salary data on data scientists and engineers and a number of other roles across a number of countries, but most of the data is from the States. We see 6 plots in front of us, which are giving salary distribution by company size, by work year, and by experience level. We can already start to see some things here, which is that mid-sized companies are earning more, or the mean is to the right of the small ones, and then the large ones are further to the right. Similarly, we can see some data in the bar charts as well, that in a small company the mean salary is around 77k USD. In a medium-sized companies 116, and a large-sized company 119. and this is mean across seniority levels, so it really doesn't give us much. We need to look at seniority levels to see junior or entry level data scientists, mid-level, experienced, etc. By work year is already telling us something. We can see that in 2020 and 2021 the mean salary was still below 100k, whereas in 2022 it jumped to 124. So this is interesting. And then mean salary by experience level tells us more, so we can really discount the executive level, director level, very high salaried practitioners, and look at entry level, mid level, and senior level expert, starting from about 62k USD, going up to about north of 130. So we have gleaned some information from this stacked multiple plot visualization, but it's not clear, and we'll check against the storytelling approach to see whether we can improve it. So building the setting and the context. What's the goal of the story? What's the central idea? Data scientists earn more than other roles. Maybe that's one. Seniority has an impact. Location has an influence. The salaries are increasing year on year. So are you the right audience for this story? Should I be telling you the story? Yes, it's definitely relevant for data science students and practitioners. Data and visualization choice. The plots appropriate or sufficient. No, they're black and white, they're unclear. As I mentioned, the originals on Kaggle are clear and colored, and here we've taken deliberately modified images to really bring this example to life. What's the hook? Maybe the hook could be data science is a lucrative profession and rewards well for successful practitioners who shape their careers deliberately. As a scope, when you move from entry level to mid level to senior expert level and director, is quite a steep curve that is increasing the mean salary. So let's see if we can create this into a better story and data narrative. Keeping it simple, there's too many plots. I haven't conveyed the central idea, and let's take the plots, select some evidence, and focus on the theme. Driving attention to the crux, I haven't made it focused enough. As I said, resolving the story with a solution, we need to connect the story with a solution and way forward. I haven't presented this yet, so let's add that to our data narrative. Choosing the right time and place. This is the right time for a data story on data scientist salaries, perfectly well aligned, and it's also the right place because AI and data science learners and enthusiasts are studying this course. So let's see what storytelling steps we have checked in our checklist. So 5 out of 9. We know our theme, maybe, yes, we know that it's relevant, we know the hook of the story, it's the right time and the right place. I don't have the right visuals, there's no clarity, there's a lot of information, I need to focus it, and I need to provide a resolution as well. So let's update, try and get 9 out of 9 in the checklist. So now I've summarized it into a single slide. The title gives you some idea of what you're looking at. Data scientist income climbing year on year. By the way, this is not a thorough analysis, it's only meant as an illustrative example. So a more thorough analysis would require additional data to be looked at and compared. But here's points of note from the 6 plots that we had. Data scientists are earning more year on year from 2020 onwards, with mean salary moving from just under 70k per annum to over 90k per annum. Makes sense? They've seen a huge drop in salaries of senior executives post-pandemic, with mid-level salaries climbing steadily. We can see this here in this diagram, the bar plot, which is dividing it by year, and then the color coding is for company size. So the lighter it is, it's medium, the darker one is large, and then small companies are in the middle. So we can straight away see in 2020 large organizations had a lot of senior execs taking a lot of money, up to about 400k. Of course, this in this data set shows that it came down in 2021 recovery and didn't really climb back up as much as in 2020 by the time we look at 2022. Please keep in mind that this is all based on the data set, and we need to look at the bias in the data set to be able to glean accurate insights, and that's why I say this is not a thorough analysis. It's just to drive this example forward to explain how you should shape your data narrative. So for the data that we've selected here, and for the analysis that's been done and the example that we're looking at, it shows that senior execs lost a lot of jobs in pandemic, and then they were hired not in 2021 but 2022. They climbed up a little bit more, but not the same way. The second thing that we see is mid-level salaries climbing steadily. So you can see mid-level here, mid-level just under 150k in 2021, over 150k, and in 2022 is touching about 200k. and you can start to see that all types of companies start to have a contribution here. Only large organizations survived after the pandemic. In the pandemic 2020, we saw some small and medium that disappeared by the time 2021 came. But in terms of the trend, we can see that it is improving from 150, just under 150K to 200K. Medium-sized companies are hiring more entry-level data scientists. The medium-sized companies are light blue, and we can see entry-level here, EN, and we can see in 2022, post-pandemic, they are starting to hire more entry-level compared to before. Large companies survive post-pandemic 2021, continuing to pay staff. I've already mentioned this, that after the pandemic, we can only see dark blue mainly in 2021 because small and medium companies might have suffered and might have had staff cuts. In terms of this plot on the left-hand side, we can see the mean salary in USD going from about 50K to 110K, and you can see the mean salaries trend increasing by 2022. There was a reduction, a lot of pandemic related influences on the market, but then it's recovered well by 2022. All of this leads us to some recommendations. So our recommendation is that we train as a data scientist and aim to join a medium-sized company which has either 50 plus to 250 employees. Anything below 50 is considered a small company in this data set. Anything above 250 is a large company in this data set. If you're already a data scientist with some experience, you should train to make the transition to a large company in a more senior role, because large companies are more stable and senior roles pay better. So action points to execute the above recommendation strategy is that you learn Python for data scientists, you learn machine learning fundamentals, you do advanced machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, and do a business perspective in data science by perhaps doing this career pursuit course at Data Science Madrasa. Again, this is just an example. And further details on that you can find at this website. And whatever data set you're working with, you can create a very succinct, clear data narrative and storyline like this, which is taking the user in a very clear manner from some observations through to a recommendation and then some action points that make sense. So let's check this against the storytelling steps checklist. We can see that we know our central idea. We want to recommend to the data scientist that you should move to a medium-sized or a large-sized company. You should try and move into senior roles. We have some concrete evidence in terms of dollar value. It's relevant to you, definitely. Visuals are very simple and only two. There's clarity, there's focus. We have a hook, which is showing the fact that the pandemic has impacted the market. The recovery has definitely happened. Mid-level practitioners are enjoying a healthy reward and remuneration packages. We have a resolution, we have some recommendation and actionable insights, and this is the right time and the right place for this story. So that brings us to the end of our section 3.4, and join me in the next one where we will be doing the final section of this unit 3.5, driving business value.